Good afternoon, actually, right now, ladies and gentlemen. I have a pleasure to welcoming you at our dissemination event, which has as an objective to present the study results of the Social Security, Employment, Income, and Wealth chapter, and as well to launch interactive dashboard with the related to the chapter data. And Social security, employment, income, and wealth is already the seventh policy area covered by our benchmarking study 2022-2025. The study we are doing for, and also in very close cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom's Relation of the Netherlands. Before I present the study objectives, research area covered by the study, and as well countries we are analyzing, I would like to thank you all for finding the time to be with us today. What exactly will be our agenda for today? So I will start with a short introduction of the benchmarking study objectives, policy areas, as well as countries covered. Secondly, we will present the research results of the Social Security, Employment, Income, and Wealth chapter. And then we will continue with the third element of our meeting today, which is the presentation of our dashboard. And our APA team will show you how our interactive tool works, where to find it, what kind of data we can find there, and also how to use it in an effective way. And at the end of our meeting today, I will present what's foreseen in 2025 and 26, but also what we are doing and what we were doing in the 2024. As already mentioned before, we can realize our benchmarking study covering the period 2022-25 thanks to generous grant from the Dutch Ministry of Interior. And we are also implementing this project in a very close cooperation with the ministry. And I have a pleasure to present the project leader from the ministry side, Mr. Frans van Dongen. Thank you very much, Frans, to join us today. And I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Ivona. It is a great to work with you and the whole APA team on this international benchmark program on public performance. I warmly welcome you all at this APA webinar for the study results regarding the public domain on social safety and the presentation of the dashboard for this domain. My name is Frans van Dongen, as Ivona explained earlier, and I'm a program manager for public performance at the Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations in the Netherlands. And I'm also the Dutch member in the steering committee for the European Public Sector Awards, APA's award scheme for public sector excellence on innovation. The Dutch Ministry of the Interior has already a long tradition in international benchmarking of public performance going back to the 19th in the last century. And we are very happy that we could establish a fruitful relationship with APA a couple of years ago to deepen this tradition with an extensive 4 years benchmark program for 35 countries. We strongly believe that the policymakers can learn a lot from international comparisons of public performance in different countries on each functional policy domain. And this is not about winners or score lists. It is about identifying mechanisms, policy systems, interventions, and contexts that are relevant to become more successful and get better public value, better outcomes, more efficiency, and more satisfied citizens and entrepreneurs. And a part of international learning from best practices, it is also valuable to learn from examples of underperformance or failures. It is helpful to learn why specific mechanisms of interventions don't work in specific contexts and prevent that these failures will be repeated. Systematically learning from failures is of great value. Further, it is of the greatest importance to bring these kind of study results to the attention of policymakers and stimulate them to use them for the purpose of policy design. And therefore, we welcome very much this initiative of EIPA for this webinar to disseminate the study results for the policy domain social security and introduce the dashboard to you that gives you full, flexible, and user-friendly online access to the data of the study results. I'm happy that we will get a demonstration of the online dashboard today. And it is interesting to see that even the European Commission has started initiatives that support this way of working with the program Building Capacity for Evidence-Based Policymaking. Lastly, but which is very important, I would like to thank our research partner, Michael Dauderstadt, who is present here, for his outstanding achievements with his international benchmark study on social security and his willingness to present the results here. I hope you will have an inspiring webinar and give the floor back to Ivona Coward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Franz, for your great presentation and for our fruitful cooperation during so many years already. And I propose that we continue with the presentation of our EIPA team, and I would like to give the floor to Miranda, and I propose that we go after and we continue with Paolo.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Miranda. I'm a senior research officer here at EIPA. And I've been working with Ivona, Franz, and obviously, of course, Michael, since the inception of this project in the benchmarking project. Today, I'm here mainly to talk about the dashboard that we've been working on with the entire team. And so I look forward to that.
Hello, my name is Paolo Giovannetti. I'm a research officer here at EIPA, and I've been working on the benchmarking study since the beginning of my time here. And I've been involved with first the publication of the public administration chapter, and then as well the publication of the other chapters and all aspects related to the data visualization, of which the dashboard is a very important component, and we will speak about it very soon. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paolo and Miranda. We can see that we have another member of the team, Björn, but unfortunately he could not join us today. And I think that it's right now the right time and the moment that I present myself. My name is Ivona Coward, what already Franz mentioned, and I'm senior expert and the project leader of this benchmarking study, working already since 16 years in the European Institute of Public Administration. And thanks to that, I have a pleasure to work with Franz, our EIPA team, and with best experts from very prestigious universities and institutions. And I would like to propose, I have some problems, but okay, now it works. I would like to propose to continue with the presentation of the study objective countries and policy areas our benchmarking study is covering. So in general, the main objective of the study is to analyze the performance of public administration in 10 policy areas and in 35 countries. And all those countries you can see on the slide, and we agreed already in 2021 with the ministry that we will cover the following countries: 27 member states of European Union, plus UK, Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland. But apart from European countries, the study also is covering Canada, United States, Australia, and New Zealand. As I already mentioned, our study is covering 10 different policy areas. So coming from public administration, education, housing, social safety, economy, infrastructure, social security, employment, income and wealth, environmental protection, health, sport, culture, and best practices and in social security systems. And because of this reason, we actually decided with the ministry to divide our benchmarking study into sub-study, and I will present you in a second on another slide exactly what kind of policies areas are covered in each sub-study. So I wanted to say as well that our benchmarking study is already the 4th edition of the benchmarking analyze. The previous ones were published in 2004, 2012, and the 3rd report prepared by the Dutch Research Institute, SCP, was published in 2015. Our role actually as APA was and is still to update the 3rd report, but as well at the same time broaden its perspective. What we are doing, we evaluate in addition the effectiveness, efficiency, cost effectiveness of all policy areas, as well as we analyze the satisfaction and trust of citizens in their administration. So as I already said before, we started our benchmarking study is covering the period 2022-25. However, we started already our work in 2021 with the scoping of the entire study, formatting, what exactly will be covered. We were identifying our program partners, negotiating the partnership agreements, checking already the data and literature availability, and basically we set up the entire program. So we can see what I already mentioned, then because it's a very broad analysis, so we agreed to divide our benchmarking study into sub-studies. In 2022, we covered 4 policy areas: public administration, education, housing, and social safety. In 2023, sub-study: economy, infrastructure, science, technology, and innovation, environmental protection, and climate change, and also the another area, the chapter we will present the fundings today: social security, employment, income, and wealth. We also in current year are working on 3 additional chapters: health, sport, social and international best practices in social security system. And in 2025, I will present that a bit more in depth at the end of our meeting today. We will present the update of all policy areas in 2025, and also we decided at the end of this year that the culture will be presented as a separate chapter also in 2025. exactly what we are doing. We are having and cooperating very closely with the ministry and all our partners. We are always starting with the kickoff meetings, and then we have coordination meetings about each policy area. And whenever it's necessary, we also have internal, let's say, meetings between authors and EIPA team. So we are doing two different type of analysis, quantitative and qualitative. And when we are talking about quantitative, we are analyzing the data available from 2007 until today, whenever, of course, it's available. And we are doing also qualitative analyzing when we are using the already existing sources of secondary research. And one of the most important element of our study, what we already mentioned before, is the dashboard. We are actually launching today the dashboard for Social Security, Employment, Income and Wealth chapter, and this dashboard is providing insight of the most important data at the glance. And our dashboard is publicly available, and actually I will show you in a second where exactly to find all the information, and will show you as well the information where to find the all dashboards for all policy areas and what will be done in 2025 and what kind of dashboard we will publish next year. And here is the slides. So basically, when we can find the sub-studies 2022, sub-study 2023, and very soon will be published the sub-study 24. So when you enter the EIPA website, there is, when we can see the flash public sector benchmarking. Clicking there, we actually can enter to the place where all information, sub-studies and dashboards and all dissemination activities are actually published. So here we are, and I have a pleasure, because that was, as promised, very short introduction, and I have the pleasure to present the author of our Social Security, Employment, Income and Wealth chapter, and our next speaker, Dr. Michael Dauderstadt. Michael is former director of the Division for Economic and Social Policy of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. And it was a real pleasure to work together with Michael. And I would like to thank you very much to be today with us. And I would like to propose that we start with the presentation of the chapter results. So thank you very much. I stop to share the screen.
Well, I have to rush a little bit through this. When we do this study, we started with a concept. Actually, I missed a slide in your presentation, Ivona, where this concept was presented. We look at inputs, outputs, outcomes, and ultimate goals. The inputs are basically government policies or some public sector activities. The output is the immediate result of these inputs. The outcome is what we look in more as a result, which is which we are really interested in. And finally, we are looking how these outcomes affect life expectancy, satisfaction with life, happiness, and trust in government. I will not go through all the indicators, but just to show some of them. What is this? For instance, in the economic field, we have these typical macroeconomic policies, taxes, government deficit, public spending, interest rate policy. Then we have the outputs, which is basically the growth of GDP, productivity, the number of hours worked, the distribution of income and wealth, and the outcome, how these things change, how unemployment is going on, or on the social security side, important outcome is the poverty rate. And this all affects the ultimate goals. So how do we go on this? We have a lot done in our quantitative analysis. We have this 28 variables, 12 inputs, 13 outputs and outcomes, and 3 ultimate goals. And we have related the inputs with the different output and outcome, and also the ultimate goals, and the same thing for the output and outcomes. I cannot present all this, of course. Interesting is what kind of outcomes did have a strong effect on life expectancy, happiness, and trust. Regarding growth, good growth is correlated with increasing life expectancy, happiness, and trust. It's no big surprise. Inequality, on the other hand, reduces it. And employment, there is a kind of ambiguous result, because unemployment, of course, decreases satisfaction with life and happiness. But on the other hand, if you work more hours, it decreases the life satisfaction too. So people are, of course, interesting to have a job, but they also are interesting to have a lot of free time, leisure time. Poverty, again, no surprise. Rising poverty reduces life expectancy, happiness, and trust. Everything is correlation, average results. There are, of course, clear indications that there might be a causal relationship, but it's not a clear proof, so to speak. Just to present 2 pictures, here we have a correlation between GDP growth and life expectancy, and GDP growth and happiness. Both are positively correlated. Negative correlations here: inequality with life satisfaction, number of hours worked with life satisfaction, and poverty and happiness and life satisfaction. As you can see, all these scatter plots have a lot of variety. It's not sometimes it's more clear, like in the case of poverty, but in other cases there are a lot of outliers. Well, in order to see what kind of policies did work, which is a core interest in this study, I created a policy score taking several different policies. Tax policy, the share of income tax in total tax revenue, the top income tax rate, then labor market policies, the minimum wage, and the strictness of employment protection legislation, and social policy, the share of social spending in GDP. Then I normalized all these values and created a policy score and looked how this policy score affects our goals. And here we can see that indeed the policies we analyzed have indeed a positive impact on the final goals, in particular life expectancy and happiness. By trust in government, the correlation is weaker because probably trust in government does not depend so much on economic and social policies, but also on other perceptions, government stability, corruption, whatever, migration, for instance, to take a current issue. Well, as I just mentioned, the things looks good, but we have some real interesting outliers. And in order to analyze these outliers, also to really have a more in-depth analysis, I did another quantitative analysis, taking or creating 3 scores: an economic score, combining GDP growth, unemployment, and inequality, and a 3 goals score, how well countries achieved a higher life expectancy, happiness, and trust, and a total score where I combined these 2 scores. And then I looked at other often used evaluations of country behavior or country success in this area. This is a Human Development Index, which is developed by UNDP, and the Social Progress Index. And if you look at this comparison, we can see that, of course, the best countries in my study have been, if you look at the changes over the period under observation between 2007 and now, more or less now, well, these are the Eastern European countries, Central Eastern European countries, the Baltic countries, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, which had high growth and which started, of course, from a very low level of performance, but did achieve a lot in these 20 years and or 15 years. The losers, the worst performing countries, were the countries of the Mediterranean, especially Greece and Spain, because of the euro crisis and the terrible policies used to fight it, the austerity policies, which really caused very heavy economic and social damage in these countries. Another interesting case is the US, but here the US performs badly because it's the only country in the whole set which has a decreasing life expectancy. Other countries which are not performing very well is Belgium, UK, but also basically because of trust and happiness, less so because of the other things, other life expectancy, for instance. Regarding the Social Progress Index, here the Mediterranean countries had a better performance because this indicator is focusing on really social protection, and here the usual liberal small state Anglo-Saxon countries are not performing that well. Well, what kind of recommendations can we draw from all this? Regarding growth, of course, policies should focus on both sides, the demand side by using fiscal and monetary policy, and the supply side by increasing productivity and labor input. Austerity policies are counterproductive, that what happened in Southern Europe. Of course, productivity growth, which depends very strongly on capital investment, there was a lot of investment in the Central East European countries, which really upgraded their whole economy by using more modern techniques and capital, which was used formerly only in the West. Ireland is a fake case. It has a high productivity growth, but I don't go into this. It's a really special case, which has more to do with accounting and tax policies. Employment, well, in order to achieve our final goals, it's better to get people employed, but not so much increasing individual working time. This goes, for instance, having a higher participation rate, which is an aspect we will analyze more in depth in the follow-up study. And income inequality actually did not change so much in our period of investigation. There were bigger changes before. Again, Central Eastern European countries are doing really well. Why that is so is a little bit difficult to see. They have that's also, I think, a question which we will analyze in our follow-up study in more depth. Wealth inequality has increased, and I think this has to do a lot with the interest rate policies. We had a long period in this time of very low interest rates, which increased wealth values, and we had a decline of top income tax rates. Poverty increased at the same time. Here we can see that redistribution, meaning that correcting the inequality of market incomes by lower inequality of disposable incomes through tax policies and social spending is effective. However, social spending could be better targeted. Some or a large part of social spending, for instance, regarding pensions, is really oriented towards protecting a certain social status which people have achieved during their working life, rather than really redistributing money. Okay, that really wraps it up briefly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this very interesting presentation. And I propose then we go directly into the presentation of our interactive dashboard and related to the Social Security income and wealth data. So please, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So we are going to present the dashboard, but I think it's a good idea to start from the APA website, just so that you can go through a typical journey towards the dashboard itself. So firstly, we have our homepage, which you can see at the screen. Ivona mentioned earlier that we have a tab where you can see everything you need to on the international benchmarking study. We also, in the landing page of this subsection of our website, it has a good description of the study in general, all of the different parts. You can download the previous studies and read, for example, this chapter in detail. We also here have, we keep up-to-date information on upcoming events surrounding this benchmarking study. So for example, we have launched several dashboards over the last year, and we also have the conference coming up next year. So Ivona will talk more about it, but you can find the link on our landing page. We also have more information on all of the sub-studies, etc. So that's the typical, the landing page. But today we're here to talk about Social Security. And so you can either click here, which the link will be updated after today's session, or at the top of the screen, we have the various tabs for all of the dashboards that we have worked on. So today we're talking about Social Security. And so I'm going to click on that. And then you taken to the landing page, again, where you will have a little bit of information about what this particular dashboard is about. You can also download the chapter itself here. So that's just the chapter on its own. And then you will see our dashboard. So as Michael mentioned, and also Ivona, we have a sort of framework in which we're studying each of the chapters is looking at the policy domain. And so here we have this inputs, outputs, outcomes, and then these ultimate goals sort of that were discussed earlier. That is including trust and satisfaction, and also a sort of general discussion about performance on its own. So we have, on the one hand, a sort of a journey throughout the data that is quite, you're led through it. And that is by interacting with the various elements in this stylized framework. But we also have a second journey where you have much more freedom to look at the data, look at the indicators, maybe see how they might be related to each other, and that you can access through these two buttons here. But Paolo will go into more detail on those sections. I'm just going to walk you through the guided tour through the data. So I may be interested, for example, in the inputs. So I could click here on that, and it will take me to a landing page that discusses the various inputs that are assessed in the chapter. And then I'm just maybe interested in social spending as a percentage of total government spending. And so if I click here on that, I will be taken to this page, which has these graphs that are sort of predetermined, where we have, for example, with the social spending as a percentage of total government spending, we have the various lines based on the country that is selected, which I will discuss a little bit in a second. The total sample, that being, in this case, the 35 countries that we're looking at, and also the region that the specific country is selected is about. I should have mentioned this first, but we can still go to that now. But at the top right, you'll see that there's a sort of a drop-down menu where you can choose the various countries that you are interested in. And then, of course, it will tell you which region that country is, just so that you can read the figures better. So at the moment, we are seeing all of this for the Netherlands, but I may be interested, for example, in looking at these indicators in the context of Belgium. And then I will be able to see that the graphs have been adjusted, and then you can see that this blue line here is the performance of Belgium. So this is to do with inputs, but I may also be interested in the trust and satisfaction, for example, which is a key emphasis of the entire benchmarking study. And so by clicking here at the bottom of the screen, which helps me to navigate, I get to the trust and satisfaction landing page, and again, which will provide me more, I can look more at the various indicators by clicking on that particular element. So this is sort of a typical journey through when you're being led through the indicators based on the framework. And I'm going to go to the home page here, which is at the bottom of the screen, which takes me back to the landing page, or the home page of the dashboard. And Paolo will discuss now about the journey with the indicators and the relationships.
Okay, thank you very much, Miranda. And indeed, now we will look at the two other possible ways to display the data and to explore a little bit the performance of countries in the domain of social security, employment, income, and wealth. So the first page I will present to you is this one, which, as you can see, looks quite different from the other pages that were displayed just a few minutes ago by Miranda, because indeed here the purpose is quite different. While the other pages were more about displaying the performance of one country at a time in the different elements of the framework. Here, the focus is more on the indicators themselves. And so this allows for more comparisons between different countries. Nonetheless, we still can see here the different, let's say, components of the framework. And so it's possible to choose the indicators within each of the components. So, for example, we can look at the outcome indicators and look at a very important outcome indicator for this chapter, which is the poverty rate. So as you can see, the visual here changed according to the selection. But before delving into the different types of visualizations, I will just briefly describe the other components of the page. For example, we have information on the unit of measurement, for example, and in this case, it's indeed the percentage of the poverty rate. Then, of course, it's possible to choose any particular regions within those that are part of the study, and let's say more in detail any particular countries you're interested in, as well as the time frame for the chosen indicators. And so you may have noticed that this time frame selection updated according to the selection of the indicator, because indeed the years of available data are not always the same for all of the indicators. And then at the bottom, we also have information on the source of the data, which sometimes it's not, we have more than one source for one indicator. But going back a bit to the, let's say, the bigger element or the biggest element on the page. So the very first possible way to look at the data is this overview table, where we have the average, in this case, for the poverty rate between 2010 and 2021. And so this provides a very general overview of this indicator. But as I was saying, then it's possible to focus maybe on just a small number of regions, but you can choose as many as you want to, of course, for example, Central and Eastern Europe, and maybe also Western Europe. And so you can see that, already the number of countries has diminished, but you can diminish it even more by just focusing on maybe two countries you would like to compare, for example, Belgium and the Netherlands in terms of poverty rate. But of course, the default option is that all countries are selected, so you have to choose any particular ones you're interested in. And finally, you can also, let's say, restrict the time horizon, if you will, to, in this case, 5 years, but you could even do just 1 year. But so now we could go into the other 3 possible ways to look at the data on this page. So if, let's say, you're more interested to visualize the different numbers in each year without maybe having to work too much with this slicer, we can just go into the detail value table, where you have indeed a table where all of the available data points in the different years are displayed. And then we can move into the last 2 visuals, which are, let's say, for those who are maybe a bit more visually inclined, so in order to display it, less relying on actual numbers. So here, as you can see, well, even though here we have restricted before the selection just to Central and Eastern Europe and Western Europe, but still it's a bit cluttered because of the number of countries. So maybe if we restrict it to Western Europe, then more easily, let's say, discernible the different the trends for the different countries. So as you can see, well, in terms of poverty, there's some countries going up, some countries going down. For example, it's interesting to see that the Netherlands started from a very low number in 2010 and seemed to have increased until 2021, but still while remaining, let's say, the country with the lowest in relative terms poverty rate. And then we can move on to the final visualization, which is indeed a geographic comparison. Well, maybe we can extend it to all of the regions so that it's, yeah, maybe to have a more, say, comprehensive view. And as you can see, countries are shaded according to their poverty rates, and countries with a darker shading have a higher poverty rate, which in this case, yeah, is not, let's say, a good outcome. So have a darker color, but yeah, in the actual countries that are performing better in this domain have, let's say, less dark colors. Then, of course, it's also possible to zoom in maybe into Europe to see a bit how the situation is looking like there, and see, yeah, we can see a bit some regional clustering in terms of Eastern Europe not doing that well, whereas maybe Western Europe and Northern Europe doing a bit better. And this indeed, let's say, idea of comparing the performance of different countries is also possible thanks to these two elements of the page I haven't spoken yet about. So the first box is about the countries with the highest and lowest values. And so in this case, it's about, yeah, all countries during the whole time period. And we can see that in general and on average, Bulgaria has the highest poverty rate as opposed to Iceland with the lowest poverty rate. And then below, we also have a bit of information about the largest increase or largest decrease or smallest increase, because sometimes, yeah, there is no decrease, only increase, but maybe that's not in this particular case. But as we can see, Latvia has had the largest increase in poverty rate between 2010 and 2021, whereas Cyprus has had the largest decrease. But of course, this is not, let's say, this is very closely related to the purpose of the benchmarking study to compare the performance of different countries. But of course, here the idea is not to look at winners or losers. It's just about seeing who is performing well or relatively well, and who is maybe still has some challenges and can learn a bit from the other countries. But indeed, this is just a snapshot view what we have on this section of the page. And if you would like to have a more detailed, let's say, overview of the different of the numbers, you can definitely look at the other, for example, at the two table I just presented a little while ago. So with that, we can move back to the home page, and then we can go into the very final page we will present today, which is about relationships or correlations. So we have this page, which again is quite different, and here the focus is on something that is quite interesting, as was also mentioned earlier by Michael, which is the relationship between the indicators instead of just their evolution over time and over space. So on this page, well, now it's empty because we need to select indicators and years. We would like to put it to a correlation. So for example, let's say that we're interested in the correlation between the very important indicator of the poverty rate, which we were looking at on the previous page. And we have then to select, well, 2006 in this case is not an available data point for this indicator. So we have to look at maybe a more recent year, such as 2021, and then we have to look at another indicator for to correlate it with, for example, trust in government, which was mentioned during Michael's presentation. And again, well, maybe not 2006, but we could go into more recent years, such as 2021. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the scatter plot visually displaying the correlation has adjusted according to the selection of the indicator on the x-axis or the horizontal axis, and the indicator on the y-axis, the vertical axis. So as you can see, we have many dots, as those of you who are familiar with scatter plots know, and each dot represents a particular country, and it's displayed at the intersection between the value of the indicator on the x-axis and the value of the indicator on the y-axis. And something else, as the legend put here at the bottom of the scatter plot, but also here on top of the page, displays countries are called according to their geographical collocation, or to be more precise, the regional collocations that we used in this throughout the study and in details in this chapter. And therefore, well, the first observation is that there is some degree of regional clustering, even not always the case, but I think it's relatively easy to discern that countries that are located in the same region tend to perform similarly in these two indicators. And so the relationship between the two indicators is also visually discernible here. But I will speak of this more in detail in just a second. But yeah, it's already visually discernible that perhaps the poverty rate is negatively associated with trust in government. And so, as you can see, let's say more rigorously displayed on the bottom right corner of the page, and this is maybe for those who are more familiar with statistical analysis, we have a numerical visualization of this interesting, I think, relationship between poverty rate and trust in government. So here we have a negative number, minus 0.37, and we should remind everyone that this coefficient can go from -1, which would indicate a very, actually -1 would be a perfectly negative relationship, and +1 a perfectly positive relationship, and 0 no relationship at all. Well, here we have minus 0.37, which is a negative relationship, not let's say a particularly strong one. And this is also related to what Michael was mentioning earlier, that trust in government is likely to be affected by a variety of different factors, and maybe not as much by social and economic factors. But nonetheless, we can imagine that there is, in countries where there is a high poverty rate, also the trust in government is usually not as high, even though, of course, we have interesting outliers, for example, Switzerland, where the poverty rate is probably not as low as one would expect, whereas the trust in government is the highest. So that's, yeah, we have some outliers, and therefore maybe that's why the relationship is not as strong as maybe in other cases. But still, this, of course, should not be seen as a causal relationship, but just as a correlation indeed. And so, in other words, in simple words, as a potential suggestion for a relationship between two indicators, which could be the starting point for further research, and maybe for further topics of analysis or of interest by both researchers, but also policymakers who would like to see a little bit what is associated with certain indicators. And of course, I was able only to present you the 2 indicators, but I would invite everyone to look at more indicators, and that would take maybe a bit of time, but to see a bit, maybe to get curious about possible relationships that maybe are not as obvious as one might imagine. So with that, we'll go back to the home page, and well, this is the end of our presentation of the dashboard. We hope that you've enjoyed it and that you will spend some time by exploring it a little further, and indeed perhaps finding hopefully out something about the performance in the domain of social security, employment, income, and wealth that you didn't know about before. And well, finally, I would like to mention that it's at the bottom of the page, there is a space where you can leave us any comments or suggestions to improve our dashboard, because indeed, I mean, it's not as easy as one might imagine to create these dashboards. So any suggestion is very much welcome. And with that, I will thank you. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'll give the floor back to Ivona.
Thank you very much, Miranda and Paolo, for this great job on the dashboard and very interesting presentation. And I propose that we go into the last part of our meeting today, which is the presentation of our current and future work. So as I already mentioned before, we started to work on the sub-study 2024 already with kickoff meeting in January 2004. And right now we are on the final phase. We already in May published one of the 3 chapters related to international best practices in social security systems. And this chapter is already published at the same place, I would say, where sub-study 2022 and 3 are published. This year, we also implemented already 5 dashboards and 5 dissemination activities, including one related to the presentation of social safety for the Dutch Ministry of Justice. And we started already the preparation for the update of the study in 2025. And of course, our update includes social security, employment, income, and wealth chapter. And we already are with Michael and the ministry, with Franz, discussing what best practices will be presented in 2025 research, and also we will update the data of the chapter. And as I was talking about the 2024 sub-study, and Miranda already was talking about it, we always have the tradition to publish our sub-study after the final conference. And final conference will take place on the 5th and 6th of February 2025. And I already said 2025 will update the entire study, and the final conference with the publication of the final report will be done in February 2026. We will also continue working on the dashboard, and next year we will have 4 dashboards and dissemination activities. And on the website where Miranda showed exactly in details, you will find all information about dates and programs, etc. And yeah, as it was already mentioned, our final conference presenting all fundings and data and best practices will be taking place in February 2026. So that it's more or less it. I promise I will be quick. So thank you very much all to be with us today and to spend this lunch, let's say, time with the Social Security income and wealth presentations. And I hope to see you soon on the 5th and 6th of February 2025 to and with the presentation of 2024 sub-study. And I would like to thank you and wish you great afternoon. So thank you and see you soon.